So we started May of 2024, and then from January 25 to December 25, we did 1.2 million. So it scaled up pretty quickly. I have prompted and created these AI agents. What they do is they're trying to see things that I don't see. I'll put an idea in and they'll all talk to each other. And you've got somebody who's like a pessimist. You've got somebody who's completely outside of our industry. And then from a consumer's perspective, and then when they talk, they come back to me with, here's the good, the bad, the ugly. And that gives me the ability to see things that I don't naturally see. So that's typically how I'll use it on a day-to-day basis.
Hi, I'm Todd, and I've spent the last decade building software for the trades. I'm talking HVAC, plumbing, electrical, landscaping, and every home service business in between. For my entire career, building software for the trades meant waiting for Silicon Valley to notice you. But that wait is over. Founders on the trades are building their own tools now, and they're doing it better than any outsider could. This show is where I spotlight them. Welcome to Blue Collar Builders. Let's get into it.
All right, Tim, Mr. Handy himself, thank you so much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
For some background, I saw your post on one of the Blue Collar Facebook groups about, I think it was the van behind you that says Handies, and I was like,
yes,
this might be the best branding of a handyman service ever, anywhere. But give us some background on Handies, how it got started, and the whole brand itself.
Sounds great. So my dad and I started the business in 2024, and as we were sitting around a kitchen table, we had my three brothers and a dad who kind of grew up letting us know that fart jokes were funny, and just growing up with all boys kind of in the countryside. So naturally we were throwing around ideas, joking what we could name our company if we were to ever launch an actual handyman company. And we came up with some, risque ones, like Handy Jobs was kind of the first one. And then we were coming up with all these slogans that we thought were funny. And as we started to actually formalize the business and do research and realize this is something that we want to get into and try and build something pretty big out of it, we had to revisit the name naturally. So we sent it through a filter, which was my wife, and she actually was the one who came up with Handies.
And did she think that the jobs made it too risque, or did she just think it wasn't memorable, like Handies itself was better?
Both. First,
okay.
Handy Jobs doesn't leave anything up for the imagination. You kind of like that. It's just,
it is. Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. And so Handies was, we actually looked at like Wendy's and Arby's and like all those companies, Denny's, and thought, oh, those are super recognizable, super easy to consume, simple, catchy. And so that's just what we went with, was Handies. And then she developed the colors, which is dark brown and like highlighter orange, basically, to tie into kind of the construction aspect with the hard hats you can see behind me. And and then we just ran with it. So it's super simple. And it's worked tremendously for us so far.
And I think you said your dad was a handyman, which is kind of how you got the idea to kind of get into the business. Give me, like, when did you start the business? How big is the business now? Just kind of put in perspective, kind of the growth of the business. And then I want to get into, like, I think a lot of people are afraid to take that type of risk. I don't know. Is it risk? You launch, like, I'm from Westfield, New Jersey. So you're like, oh, I'm Westfield Plumbing, or I'm like, Connecticut, HVAC. What has been the response? Because I assume the first job that you did, it was like, oh God, like, what is the response going to be? I'd love to hear kind of what that response was like. So talk to us just about the scale of the business and the response you've seen so far from the branding.
Yeah, sounds good. So we started May of 2024 is when I quit my real estate full-time and came into this full-time. And from May to December, we did about 365,000 in revenue. And then from January 25 to December 25, we did 1.2 million. So it scaled up pretty quickly. And in our industry, I found just through conversations that we're an outlier for sure in our industry, which is great because it gives us the opportunity to look at, roll up strategies and things like that, just with how fragmented it is. So we started in 2024. We've got, 7 trucks on the road. We've got an office team, and we're really trying to, standardize and professionalize this trade in particular. I believe it's kind of going to be the next big wave of consolidation and private equity and stuff. So, our first job, I mean, I was nervous. I was very nervous to put the brand out there. And I remember posting in a Facebook group, and it, got all sorts of different comments and, like, do you think he knows? And I'm like, obviously I know, I get it. But I think the response was very different than I thought it was going to be. I was nervous, and it was as if no one got the joke for a while. And then I decided to come up with these yard signs that did not go through the marketing filter. I just did them completely on my own. And I took the inspiration from the "Got Milk" slogan, where it's just simple with a question mark at the end. So I said, "Need a handy?" question mark. And I put that on a yard sign that says, obviously, Handyman Services under it
Yeah.
with our phone number. And we put them all over town. And I started to realize, like, oh shit, these are working. Not because the volume that we were getting in terms of business calls. I mean, obviously that was there, but I was at Home
Mm,
Depot wearing this hat, and some random person pulled me aside and said, "Hey, are you guys the ones with the signs that say, 'Do you need a handy?'" And I said, "Yeah." And he was laughing, and he's like, "I got to show you something." So he pulls out his phone and he scrolls through his family group text, where every time they see one of these signs, they screenshot it and send a picture because of how funny it is, or how funny they thought it was.
yeah.
And so I thought immediately, like, wow, this is doing its job. Like, that's exactly what we intended, was to have someone double take, to look at it and be like, oh my God, that's clever, or that's funny, or that's catchy.
Yeah.
And then kind of the reticular activating system kicks in when they actually need a handyman, and they're like, they're not remembering whatever handyman service, they're remembering handies. And it's easy to find everywhere. And then the brown and orange, like, one of the best compliments I get is people say, "Are you guys the ones with the brown and orange vans?" Because it just reiterates that now people are associating colors, a color combination, with us in
Yep.
town. So those were kind of the two things. And then with the hats and kind of creating, my wife says that you got to create a wearable brand. I was on my way home from Chicago from a bachelor party, and I had the hat on, and the flight attendant stopped me as I was getting off and bought the hat off my head because they thought it was so funny. We've seen them at concerts, at music festivals, and these people don't know who we are. They're not friends of ours. And that's when we really thought, like, man, we got to lean into this and,
I'm
and
not
scale
sure
the
you're
brand.
seeing many Westfield handyman services or like Westfield HVAC or whatever you want to call it, hats being sold or bought at it didn't sound like you were selling it. It sounds like it was just bought on a plane or at a festival. It's like it has built-in virality. Like I can only imagine once you guys kind of go nationwide and get some scale, like the virality even on Facebook, like you could do so much on kind of the social media. I think everyone I talked to in the trade store was like, how do I get more business? And they have to like get one customer, get a lead, get that customer. I think for you, it's like one person sees it, they share it. It becomes a conversation that you don't have to
Hmm.
pay for. It is a conversation. It's unique. It's different. I think most people are afraid to kind of take that risk.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
you guys have done a good job. So, you guys are doing about $1 million. It sounds like from our conversation, you're now using some software, but what you're starting to realize is the software doesn't do necessarily everything you want it to do. And it sounds like you're trying to think through different ways. You're using AI today to like coach you, and you're new to the business in a lot of ways. Talk to me about the software you're using today, what you think it like doesn't necessarily do for you specifically, and then how you look at leveraging AI in the future.
Yeah. So I think the two big components is estimating. So accuracy in terms of estimating, but when it comes to the software itself, like that we use out in the field, it's a lot of it has to do with price book. And I think that there's like two components of why people aren't getting into the handyman industry in terms of like private equity, big companies. And it's the lack of scalability only in terms of repeatable services, right? Because we're broad by nature. That's kind of what the handyman services are. They were born to be. And so
Yep.
we've got so many different tasks. Home Depot is essentially our price book, right? We could use at any given job anything in Home Depot.
Yeah.
And so it creates a little bit of a way too robust price book
Yeah.
that doesn't really allow you to be efficient. And so that's one way that we're trying to utilize AI, is how do we, and it's more on the creation side. So we're not actively using it for this. I'm trying to use AI to help me come up with strategies or ideas on how to take all of the things that we do and put them into a price book more efficiently, and how we're going to, translate that to the field with estimators, so that a random person could go out and in a week be taught how to estimate a random repair that they've never found before or never
Yep.
come across before. So I think those two things would really elevate our business in terms of, sales conversion, and scalability. So that's really what we're leaning into of trying to figure out. But they just, these, they're built for HVAC, plumbing, electrical, roofing, And when it comes to Handyman, we're niche in a lot of ways. And so we just don't have, you
Yeah,
said it,
there's
we're
those
working
one or
around the software.
yeah, you're fitting yourself into the software. The software isn't necessarily built for you. And even if it was a handyman software, it's still not built for a handyman software that works exactly for how you want it to work, right? It's for how the software said, this is how it works. Now fit your business into how it works. Versus now, I think
Yeah.
software is totally changing, and that's really what we're building at Dalton Mills. Is like we believe you should, the software should work for you. You shouldn't fit into the software because I tell you this is how you're supposed to run your job. You say no, this is how I run my job. The software should do what I want it to do, which is just a
Yeah.
different way of thinking, and AI has completely changed that. You mentioned something else like you're using AI. I talked to a lot of people that are building software with AI. That's building, but I also think using AI as a business coach or learning, like that's also building. That's building your knowledge that's just as powerful. You mentioned that you're doing some of that. Like, how do you use AI to help you build the business, not just from a product standpoint, from like a soundboard or from a business partner standpoint? Are you doing some of the stuff like that?
Yeah. So I have kind of prompted and created these like AI agents. And what they do is they're trying to see things that I don't see. I'm a natural optimist. I am a visionary. I see the bigger picture. But that often leads me down paths where I could be making not the wrong decision, but a decision that is like not where we're supposed to be at right now in the part business, or it's not solving the one problem that we need. So I use it as like a soundboard, almost like a board of, advisors where I'll put an idea in and they'll all talk to each other. And you've got somebody who's like a pessimist. You've got somebody who's completely outside of our industry looking at it from like a wide angle. I don't know anything about your specific industry, but here's how I see it. And then from a consumer's perspective, so that and then when they talk, they come back to me with, here's what we see, here's the good, the bad, the ugly. And that gives me the ability to see things that I don't naturally see, especially because I'm in the business every day. And so
Yeah.
I'm naturally going to start to get kind of, these blind spots that that AI sees for me. So that's typically how I'll use it on a day-to-day basis when like an idea comes up.
Yeah, I mean that's incredible. I mean that's the way that everyone at bare minimum should be using AI, and then I think eventually it's like, how do I build little pieces of software, little workflows or automations or other things
Hmm.
to help me actually day to day with the business. And I think you said something about how when you send out a salesperson or a technician or a handyman that like to quote the job, there's so many different things they could quote, especially in your business. Like there's
Hmm.
everything. I can only imagine the list of the range of jobs. So quoting those is also very hard. Do you imagine AI being like very useful there as well? That's something you're thinking
I think
about?
that could be like the number one most helpful tool for us. Like if you drop that into my plate right now, I would buy it. It would truly streamline. The hardest part of our business is diagnosing the repair. So you have to have tons of experience to do that. And if you have the experience, you're probably not a salesperson. So you have to
Yeah.
be taught sales. But sales, we could go and grab a door-to-door pest control or roof salesperson and put them in the field. And if we could do that and train them up in a week instead of 20 years of knowledge, we would increase sales, increase conversion ratio, and be able to scale our business much faster.
It sounds like that tool would be handy. Yeah, no, I got you there. Well, listen, man, I appreciate it. It's definitely one of the best brands I've seen. I'm excited to do a follow up in a few months or years or whatever it is to see how big the business is. But I appreciate you sharing handies with us.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for letting me. I appreciate it.
All right, thanks, Tim.